Good morning, everyone. This is the stakeholder meeting to discuss the Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner's registration system transition and related rule amendments for crafted precious metal dealers. My name is Matt Nance, and I'm the OCCC's Deputy General Counsel. I'm joined by a few members of the OCCC staff, including our Commissioner, Leslie Pettyjohn, Assistant General Counsel, Lori Hobbs, and Manager of Licensing, Moran Zepeda. At the entrance of the room, we have copies of our stakeholder meeting notice, which outlines the registration system transition and includes a copy of the rule amendments. A copy of the meeting notice is also available on the OCCC's webpage for recent and upcoming rules. Also at the entrance table, we have a sign-in sheet. If you're not currently on our email stakeholder list, please provide your name and email address so that you'll receive any rulemaking notices for crafted precious metal dealers in the future. We're holding this meeting on GoToWebinar. Some of you might be listening on your phones, some might be watching on your computer, some might be doing both. For those watching on your computer, there's a window where you can submit questions, and if you have technical questions about using the webinar, you can type them in there and Lori will try to answer those. If you have questions or comments on what we're going to be discussing today, go ahead and type those in at any time, and we'll be getting to those as well. And if you're on a computer with a mic, there's a function allowing you to raise your hand, and we can let you make a comment verbally. And since you're here in person, we do have a table with a mic. If you would like to come up and share any comments, if you have a shorter comment and want to share a kind of town hall style, you can do that as well. Although if you do that, I'll have to repeat it for the folks on the webinar so that they can hear it. And now I'd like to turn things over to Commissioner Pettyjohn to make a couple opening remarks.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you for your introduction of this issue. As Matt mentioned, this is the opportunity that we have to hear from our stakeholders regarding the crafted precious metal dealer transition of the registration system, and we are very grateful for your participation today. We're very grateful for those of you here in person as well as those of you on the webinar. Your input is important to us, that we want to make sure that we have fully contemplated the effects and the impact of this particular issue, and if there are things that you have concerns about, whether it relates to this or if there are other concerns that you may have. We haven't had a stakeholder meeting recently that's affected this particular area. We're happy to hear any of those other issues that you think are important that as regulators we should be aware of. So again, thank you for being here. We want to make this process as smooth and seamless as possible for you, and want to make sure we have good transparency to the public as well. And so we look forward to hearing from you, and at this point I'll turn things over to Moran to get started with part one on the registration system transition.
I'm going to go ahead and press something real quick to make sure we have started for all attendees. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I guess Moran, keep going.
Okay, great. So we're going to generally discuss the transition to ALEC for this registration. So we plan to launch the crafted precious metals application submission in ALEC in 2018, likely in the summer. And essentially that will be account creation and application submission. We'll go into those slides just so you can begin to get familiar with those here in a moment. But we believe that this will allow time to bring folks onto ALEC from the DPS system. We plan to simultaneously turn off the DPS system when we launch in ALEC, so there shouldn't be any overlap. And we think that that will be an efficient and organizational way to do that. ALEC is our online system. It stands for the, oh my goodness. What does ALEC stand for? It used to be on the website.
Annual reports, licensing, examination,
compliance system. Yep, that's it. And again, we'll show you some of those slides here in a moment. But essentially, there will be no new fees and few changes.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay. Again, this is the webinar to discuss the OCCC's registration system transition for crafted precious metal dealers. Thank you all for attending. our licensing manager, Moran Zapata, was just discussing what the system transition will entail.
And we apologize for any technical difficulties.
Yes, we apologize if you didn't hear earlier parts of the meeting, but they will be available online later.
Okay, so about halfway through the slide on the registration system transition, there will be no new fees and there will be few changes to the process as far as the data entry that we collect. We're going to be creating some efficiencies, and we think that this will provide enhanced customer service because when you come into Alex, we will be able to see what you see and provide better customer service and help you through that process versus the DPS system where we can't necessarily see all of those items. So we hope that this will help us provide better customer service to those coming into the system. One other thing I wanted to note was that transactions only will still be submitted via the Texas Online Metals portal, but your renewals and your applications will come in through Alex, the Application Licensing Examination and Compliance System. Okay, moving on to the renewal process. I'm going to give it a moment. So we plan to delay renewal until December of 2019, essentially launching in summer of 2018, allowing time for folks to come into the system for more than a year, and then renewal will happen in 2019. The renewal period will then be in December versus based on your anniversary date. We plan to open renewal in early November, and you will be able to renew online through January 30th of that renewal period. So that's a little bit about renewal. Happy to answer any questions about renewal or the application system in a moment. But now getting familiar with those websites and our online system. So this is a view of our online system where you will log in. There's various links to that on our website from occc.texas.gov. So this is where you will create an account. You'll see underneath the username and password section, there's a Create Online Account button. That's where you'll begin the process. Basically, same information as you submit via DPS Now as far as business information. So shouldn't be any other additional information than what you're already submitting. Moving on to initial submission of your application, which again will launch in summer of 2018. You'll notice the Submit Application button there. That's where you'll begin the process. Again, similar information to what's already being submitted. So that's where that will be. This is also your dashboard, what you'll see when you initially log in with all of your registration information there. And you'll be able to see various items there. Moving on to the renewal screen. As you'll notice there, step 1 will be to click Manage My Business. Step 2 will be to click Renew Registration. It's a fairly simple process. You will essentially complete your renewal for a year there. I also wanted to go ahead and include our licensing contact information. We realize that this is a change and a transition period, and we want to be a resource for everyone as they come into the online system. So I wanted to be sure and include both our direct line and our licensing email there. We would like to hear your feedback, and again, we want to be a resource through this transition for everyone. So that is an overview of the registration system transition. Now I'd like to turn it over to you all to provide comments or questions. You'll have another chance to discuss the rule amendments in a few minutes. Again, if you have really short remarks, you can say those from your seat. And if they're more extensive, please go ahead and come up to the table. So yes?
One comment. My renewal is up in May. Should I go ahead and renew through the DPS, as you will not be online until July?
I think that would probably be the best plan, is to renew through DPS. and then you would come into the system in 2019. So, yes.
You wouldn't have to renew again until December of 2019.
Right.
Okay, understood, thank you.
Lori, do we have any comments or questions from the webinar?
Not yet.
Okay. Then with that, I will turn things over to Lori to continue with part 2 of the rule amendment.
All right. Well, again, my name is Lori Hobbs. I'm one of the attorneys that drafts rule amendments for our agency, and I'm also the rules liaison for the OCCC. So a lot of the communications you will see will be from me. I'm just going to highlight a few of the key rule amendments that go along with the registration system transition just outlined by Moran. First, again, these amendments do reflect this registration system changeover. In Section 85.1007, it provides for the calendar year expiration on December 31st and renewal, on a calendar basis. We have a new rule, 85.1012, that really focuses just on the transition. It's a temporary rule, but basically in A1 is where the provision talks about registrations before the transition of date of July 1st. Those are going to be effective for a year. So those folks who go through DPS are going to get your full year's worth of registration. But the transition date right now, tentative, we will certainly inform folks if that changes, is in subsection B1, and it is July 1st of 2018 when we plan to turn on the registration through the ALEC system on the OCCC's portal. And then, as Moran said earlier, the first renewal period is in December of 2019, and that's in Rule 85.1012, subsection B2. Continuing on with a couple more highlights in the rules. With temporary locations, one thing that we did change that we thought was really not necessary to provide, we've removed the requirement to provide hours of operation. It's in 2 locations in the rules, 85.1002 and 85.1008. So still, of course, providing the dates on those temporary locations, but not the hours. And then also with temporary locations in 85.1007 subsection E, those are not going to be renewable. Of course, just going from, whatever, few weeks, weekend, month, whatever period you have for those, and just getting a new one at whatever time for a temporary location. Just the permanent ones being renewable at the end of the calendar year. And next, regarding any information that you may change, and so that we can keep up with the most current information from our registered dealers. Section 85.1005 requires the dealers to notify the OCCC if there are material changes in your application information. Mainly, it's going to be your address, the person, of course, in charge of handling the transactions. And then in conjunction with that, also to maintain current contact information. So those are just some companion subsections in A and B in Rule 85.1005. And the last rule amendment I'd like to highlight relates to the late renewal penalty in 85.1007 subsection C. So one change that we made, there will be no additional late renewal fee if you renew 30 days after the expiration at the end of the calendar year on December 31st. So if you renew by January 30th of the following year, there's not going to be an additional late fee for that. If you renew between 31 and 180 days after expiration, there would be a late renewal fee of $50. And this maintains the current late renewal fee, but actually does extend the late renewal period by 30 days. So we've kind of streamlined as far as the late renewal, fees and that process goes. So those are the key rule changes. And, do we have any comments or questions specifically on the rule amendment?
Lori, I had a quick thing before we get to the stakeholders. Could you talk a little bit about the timeline for the rules and the fact that this is just a draft and needs to be approved by our oversight body, the Finance Commission?
Sure. So with this draft of the rules, again, we refer to it as a pre-comment draft. And this is just our first opportunity to give stakeholders a chance to look at rule amendments and see if they want to provide, some input informally on those. And we will be taking written pre-comments on that until Monday, January 29th at 5 p.m. And so then we'll take any comments we receive, and these would be scheduled to be presented at the Finance Commission's February 16th meeting coming up next month. And at that time, it's just a proposal. The Commission would have the chance to vote to publish those rules for official comment. And they are posted in the Texas Register online, and we will also post them on our website if the Finance Commission does vote to publish them for official comment. And that's a 30-day comment period at minimum. And we'll gather more input at that time, and then incorporate any necessary changes. And then we bring them back to the Commission actually for official adoption. And that would be at the Commission's April meeting, which I don't have that date in front of me.
Third Friday in April.
And it might have been moved because it's Easter.
April 20th?
April 20th, I believe.
Yeah.
So at that point, there would be presented for adoption. The Commission always, their, decision to vote whether to approve or not. But assuming all goes smoothly, they would be adopted in April and go into effect in early May. So that is the timeline on the rules.
Our idea being that the rules would go into effect before the transition happens.
Right, to give us some time to have those in place before the actual registration system transition on July 1st.
Question?
Yes.
Sure.
On the February the 16th meeting of the Commission, can they make changes themselves to the rules, or just say yes or no?
They can make changes, and then changes could also be made between kind of the February proposal and the April adoption in response to official comment.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I don't see any questions from our online folks. So with that, I guess I'll turn it back over to Moran to see if we have any other questions or wrap up that we want to discuss.
Okay, so if there aren't any other additional questions, comments, or feedback, then I will hand it over to the Commissioner. Lori, we haven't received anything via the webinar.
No, we have pending.
Yes.
I would just like some further comments maybe.
Yeah, sure. Come on up.
Longer.
Come on up.
Stuart Toner from Safina Materials in Conroe, Texas, that with the OCC now overseeing this program for the state of Texas, is there any change in the mandate and the purpose of your oversight compared to the DPS?
So I would just say that we've been overseeing this program since 2011. We're only bringing it onto our online system versus it being through the DPS system. So I would just clarify that. But as far as any additional oversight or changes, that wouldn't really apply. Commissioner, do you have anything?
I just say, I'm going to just amplify what you said, but it continues on as it has for the last since 2011, for the last several years, and this is mostly just a transition of systems, and really the transition relates to the period of time for renewal, but the rest of the program should continue as it has, unless there are other issues that need to be brought to our attention as we're looking at rules, and if there are any issues that we need to further consider. The legislature has not made recent changes to this area of law in the last two sessions, and so we don't have anything in that regard, policy direction from the legislature that we need to implement. But if there are other things that are within our capability and that the folks think need addressed, we're certainly willing and able to hear those.
Yeah, the reason for me asking that question is the recent changes in AML and
Yes.
money laundering, Bank
Yes.
Security Act,
Yes.
et cetera, and the tightening of those rules and regulations of knowing your customer, which we are seeing from the banks. We are going through an audit of those now, particularly complicated for me because we have foreign ownership in Europe, et cetera. And I wondered if the OCC would be taking and looking at precious metals dealers in Texas and fulfilling any role in AML compliance or anything like that in the future.
We don't presently have plans to do that. We can be a resource to folks if there's additional advisory information we might be able to help folks provide to be in compliance, but currently the statutory scheme work doesn't extend to AML, and so again, we're happy to be a resource, but that we don't have current plans to do that. Matt, do you have other comments?
No, I think that's right. As the commissioner said, our kind of statutory authority regarding kind of registration and disclosures has not changed, and our primary purpose here is continuing on with that existing current mission.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. Okay. Lori, have we received any other questions from the folks on the webinar?
No?
Okay. So as a reminder, as far as the timeline, as we stated earlier on this pre-comment draft, if anyone would like to provide us with written informal pre-comments, the draft has been out, published on our website now for a while. We'll continue to accept written informal pre-comments until 5 p.m. on Monday, January 29th. And those would be emailed to rule.comments@occc.texas.gov. We will continue to update these rules on our website, so stay tuned to the website if you want to follow along what's happening. If you know someone else who might be interested in this webinar and the meeting that was held here, the audio will be posted also on the website, so folks are welcome to review that, and we will assimilate that, and we will send out a proposed draft once we get that proposed draft, and we'll prepare to submit something to the Finance Commission for their February 16th meeting. So once again, we're very grateful for the participation for those of you who've joined us today and who are joined us online, and we certainly welcome your feedback, so please, if you have additional feedback, please provide that to us. And again, thank you, and have a good day. We're adjourned.